The morning sun rose over the Galactic Council's Interspecies Military Academy, casting long shadows across the training grounds. 500 cadets from dozens of different worlds stood in neat rows, waiting for their assignments. Among them stood Zephyra, and she was shaking. She tried to hide it, but her thin arms trembled. Her legs felt weak. Even standing still for this long made her body hurt. Zephyra was an Ethel, and the Ethel were not built for war. Her people had beautiful minds. They could speak to each other through thoughts alone. They built machines that could bend space and time. Their cities floated in the sky, held up by technology that other species could barely understand. But their bodies? Their bodies were fragile like glass. Zephyra's bones were light and thin, almost like crystal. A fall that would bruise another species could break her arm. A run that others found easy left her gasping for air. During the physical tests 3 days ago, she had finished last. Dead last. Out of 500 cadets, she was the weakest. The other cadets whispered about her. A group of chromats, huge, muscular warriors with thick gray skin, laughed quietly when she walked past. The Zenthari, with their 4 arms and natural armor, simply ignored her. Even the small Quillarians, who were half her size, seemed stronger than she was. "Why did they even accept you?" one cadet had asked her yesterday. Zephyra had no answer. Now the academy commander was reading out mentor assignments. Each cadet would train under an instructor from a different species. It was meant to build unity, to help everyone learn from each other. Zephyra waited, wondering which species would get stuck with her. Probably someone patient. Maybe a Zenthari instructor who specialized in technology, since that was all she might be good for. "Cadet Zephyra," the commander's voice boomed across the field. "You are assigned to Sergeant Marcus Chen." Silence fell over the nearby cadets. Then someone giggled. The giggle became laughter. Zephyra felt her face grow hot. She knew why they were laughing. Sergeant Marcus Chen was human, and humans were almost as new to the galaxy as they were strange. The humans had only joined the Galactic Council 15 years ago. They came from a planet the other species called a death world, a place so dangerous that just living there was considered extreme survival training. Their planet had disasters, predators, diseases, and weather that would kill most species in hours, but humans had no special powers. They couldn't read minds like the Ethel. They weren't strong like the chromats. They had no armor, no claws, no venom, nothing. They were just stubborn, impossibly, stupidly stubborn, and the galaxy didn't quite know what to make of them. "The weakest cadet with the primitive species," someone whispered. "Poor thing." Zephyra walked to the side of the field where the mentors waited. She found Sergeant Marcus Chen easily. He was the only human there. He stood alone, watching the cadets with dark, calm eyes. He wasn't particularly tall or muscular. He looked ordinary, really. Almost boring compared to the other instructors with their scales, fur, and armor. When Zephyra approached, Marcus looked at her. She waited for disappointment, for the same pity she saw in everyone else's eyes. Instead, he just studied her face carefully, like he was trying to read something written there. "Cadet Zephyra," he said. His voice was quiet but clear. "Do you know why you're here?" The question surprised her. "Sir? At this academy. Why did you come here?" Zephyra straightened her back, even though it made her shoulders ache. "My people need warriors, sir. We have great technology, but the galaxy is becoming dangerous. We cannot hide behind our machines forever. We need soldiers who can fight." Marcus nodded slowly. "And they sent you?" "I volunteered, sir." Something changed in Marcus's expression. Not quite a smile, but something close. "Good. Training starts tomorrow at 0400 hours. Don't be late." "Yes, sir," Zephyra said. She hesitated. "What will we be training?" Everything, Marcus said simply. Get some rest. You'll need it. The next morning, Zephyra arrived at the training ground at 0400 hours exactly. The sky was still dark, with only a hint of gray on the horizon. She expected to be first, to wait for her instructor, but Marcus was already there, already running. He ran past her in the darkness, his breathing steady and even. "Keep up," he called over his shoulder. Zephyra started running. Her legs immediately protested. Her lungs burned. The Ethel were not made for running. They were made for thinking, for building, for dreaming. Not this. She lasted 2 minutes before her legs gave out. She fell to her knees on the track, gasping for air, feeling like her chest would explode. Tears stung her eyes, tears of frustration, of shame, of pain. Marcus's footsteps approached. She waited for the lecture, for him to tell her she wasn't cut out for this. Instead, he knelt beside her. "Can you stand?" I don't think so, sir." "Okay." Without another word, Marcus lifted her up. He carried her like she weighed nothing, all the way back to the starting line of the track. He set her down gently. "Tomorrow," he said, "you'll make it 3 minutes." Zephyra looked up at him, confused. "Sir, I can barely make it 2 minutes. How can I—" "Tomorrow you'll make it 3 minutes," Marcus repeated. His voice was certain, like he was stating a fact. "And next week, you'll make it 5. And the week after that, 10. Do you know why?" "Why, sir?" "Because that's what humans do. We get better. One day at a time, one step at a time. We don't quit." He looked down at her with those calm, dark eyes. "And for the next year, you're going to train like a human, not like an Ethel. Can you do that?" Zephyra thought about her people, about why she came here, about the future her species needed. "Yes, sir," she whispered. "I can do that." "Good. Go rest. Tomorrow. 3 minutes." As Zephyra limped away, she saw other cadets watching from their barracks windows. They were laughing again, the weakest cadet with the primitive human. It was a joke to them. But something had changed inside Zephyra. Marcus hadn't looked at her with pity. He hadn't seen someone weak. He'd seen someone who could get stronger. Maybe, just maybe, that was enough to start with. Tomorrow she would run for 3 minutes, and she would prove them all wrong. 3 months passed, and Zephyra could now run for 20 minutes without stopping. It didn't sound like much, but for an Ethel it was impossible. At least it was supposed to be impossible. Every morning at 0400 hours, she met Marcus at the training ground. Every morning they ran, and every morning she went a little bit further than the day before, just like Marcus promised, but running was only the beginning. While other cadets spent their time in simulation rooms learning tactics and weapon systems, Marcus took Zephyra to the academy library. He showed her something she never expected: human history. "This is how humans became what we are," Marcus said, pulling up images on the display screen. "We weren't the strongest, we weren't the fastest, but we never gave up." He showed her ancient videos of human hunters. They didn't chase animals with speed or kill them with strength. Instead, they followed their prey for days, walking slowly but never stopping. The animals would run away, rest, run again, rest again. But the humans never stopped walking. Eventually, the animals became so tired they couldn't run anymore. "Persistence hunting," Marcus explained. "We tired them out. That's what humans do best. We just keep going." Zephyra watched, fascinated. She had never thought of weakness as a weapon before. Marcus showed her more. Stories of human soldiers who marched through snow and heat that would kill other species. Athletes who trained their bodies to do things that seemed impossible. People who climbed mountains, crossed deserts, and survived disasters through pure determination. "Your bones are fragile," Marcus said one day during combat training. "So we won't rely on strength. We'll use speed instead." He taught her to move differently than other fighters. While Chromat cadets learned to absorb hits with their thick skin, Zephyra learned to never get hit at all. Marcus showed her how to dodge, how to slide, how to move in ways that made her lightweight body an advantage instead of a weakness. "You're small and light," he said. "That means you're fast. Use it." During weapons training, while others learned to fire heavy plasma cannons, Marcus gave Zephyra smaller, lighter weapons. "Pick your shots carefully," he told her. "Make everyone count. You can't waste energy like the big species can." But the hardest lessons weren't about fighting. They were about pain. The Ethel avoided pain. Their whole culture was built around comfort, efficiency, and logic. Pain was something to eliminate, not embrace. Marcus saw things differently. "Pain is just information," he said after a particularly brutal training session. Zephyra's muscles screamed, her lungs burned, and her head pounded from using her telepathy too much. "It tells you you're alive. It tells you you're pushing your limits. Listen to it, but don't let it control you." He taught her something he called mental toughness. When her body wanted to quit, she learned to tell it, "Not yet." When the pain seemed unbearable, she learned to breathe through it, to accept it, to keep moving anyway. "Humans have a saying," Marcus told her. "Pain is temporary, but quitting lasts forever." The other cadets started to notice the changes. During the monthly endurance trials, Zephyra no longer finished last. She passed 15 cadets, then 30, then 50. The Xanthari who once ignored her now watched her carefully. The Kilarians whispered among themselves when she ran past them. In combat simulations, she started winning matches she should have lost. She was faster than expected, more creative in her tactics. She did things that didn't make sense by galactic military standards, things that only made sense if you thought like a human. One afternoon, during a sparring session, a Chromat cadet named Vex decided to teach her a lesson. He was huge, nearly 3 times her size, with muscles like stone and skin like armor. He'd been laughing at her since day one. "Let's see what the human taught you, little crystal," Vex growled, stepping into the sparring ring. The other cadets gathered to watch. This would be entertaining. The massive Chromat against the fragile Ethel. Everyone knew how it would end. Vex charged at her like a bull, relying on his strength and size. It's what Chromats always did. It's what worked for them. But Zephyra didn't try to block him or match his strength. Instead, she moved. She stepped aside at the last possible moment, just like Marcus taught her. Vex stumbled past her, confused. He turned and swung his massive arm at her. Again, she didn't block. She ducked under his arm and struck him twice in quick succession, once in the knee, once in the lower back. Precise hits at weak points. Vex roared and charged again, and again, Zephyra wasn't there. She was faster, using his own strength against him, making him tired, making him frustrated. Marcus had taught her something he called fighting smart, not hard. Use your enemy's expectations against them. Let them tire themselves out. Wait for the perfect moment. That moment came when Vex, breathing heavily and angry, made a wild swing that left him off balance. Zephyra swept his leg, the same technique Marcus had drilled into her 1,000 times. The massive Chromat crashed to the ground. Silence filled the training room. Zephyra stood over Vex, breathing hard but still standing. She had won. The laughter stopped that day. No one called her Little Crystal anymore. No one joked about the primitive human and his weak student. Marcus watched from the corner of the room, his face neutral. But when Zephyra looked at him, he gave her a small nod. It was the closest thing to praise she'd seen from him. That night, other cadets started asking her questions. How did she move so fast? How did she beat Vex? What was the human teaching her? Zephyra didn't know how to explain it. Marcus wasn't teaching her to be strong. He was teaching her to be something else, something the galaxy didn't have a word for yet. By the 6th month, rumors spread through the entire academy. The human student was becoming dangerous. Instructors watched her training sessions with interest. Other mentors asked Marcus about his methods. Marcus never explained. He just kept training Zephyrah, pushing her a little further each day. "You're not trying to be a chromat," he told her. "You're not trying to be a Zenthari. You're learning to fight like a human. And humans don't quit." Zephyrah looked at her reflection in the training room mirror. Her body was still thin, still fragile. But something in her eyes had changed. She stood differently now, moved differently, thought differently. She was becoming a warrior. Not the kind the galaxy knew, but something new, something human. The final semester arrived, and with it came the Crucible, the test that every cadet feared and respected. The Crucible was a month-long survival exercise on Kaldros, a hostile moon with freezing nights, burning days, and storms that could kill in minutes. Cadets would be divided into fire teams of 4. They had to complete objectives, survive the environment, and face other teams in combat scenarios. No cadet had ever died during the Crucible, but many left with scars. It was designed to be nearly impossible, to push cadets beyond their limits. Many species considered it the hardest military test in the known galaxy. Zephyrah stood in the briefing room with the other cadets, listening to the commander explain the rules. She felt nervous, but ready. For 9 months, Marcus had prepared her for exactly this. Fire teams were announced. Zephyrah was assigned to Team 7 with 3 other cadets. Corvin, a massive Vrax weapons specialist who carried a plasma cannon bigger than Zephyrah herself. Nixie, a small Quillarian infiltrator with 6 eyes and incredible stealth abilities. And Thorn, a Zenthari pilot with 4 arms and natural armor plating. They looked at Zephyrah with doubt in their eyes. They'd heard the rumors about her defeating Vex, but rumors were just rumors. This was real combat, real survival. Could the fragile Ethel really handle it? Before deployment, Marcus met with Zephyrah one last time. He wasn't allowed to go with them into the Crucible. This test had to be faced alone. "Remember everything I taught you," Marcus said simply. "Don't try to be the strongest. Be the smartest. Be the one who refuses to quit." "What if I fail?" Zephyrah asked quietly. Marcus looked at her with those calm, dark eyes. "You won't fail. You know why? Because failure is just quitting with a fancy name. And you don't quit. Not anymore." He handed her something small, a patch with human writing on it. She couldn't read the letters, but Marcus translated, "Never give up." "Keep it with you," he said. "And remember, you've learned everything I can teach you. Now show them what a death world creates." The transport ships dropped the teams onto Kaldros' surface at dawn. The cold hit Zephyrah immediately, biting through her suit. The landscape was harsh, jagged rocks, ice fields, and red dust that swirled in the thin atmosphere. Team 7 moved to their first objective point. At first, the other 3 members tried to protect Zephyrah, treating her like the weak link, but she quickly proved them wrong. Her telepathy detected an ambush before the enemy team could spring it. Her speed allowed her to scout positions that the heavier members couldn't reach. Her endurance, trained by months of running with Marcus, let her keep pace with everyone else despite her smaller size. By the end of the first week, her team stopped treating her differently. Nixie even said, maybe the human knew what he was doing after all. The second week brought disaster. Team 7 was crossing a narrow canyon when another fire team attacked from above. Plasma fire rained down on them. Corvin, their heavy weapons specialist, took a direct hit protecting the others. He went down hard, his armor smoking. They were pinned. The enemy team had the high ground, superior numbers, and better position. Thorn dragged Corvin to cover while Nixie returned fire, but it was clear they were outmatched. Then a voice called down from above. It was Drex, the enemy team leader, a chromat even bigger than Vex. "Surrender with honor," he shouted. Your heavy is down. You're outnumbered. Tradition allows you to yield. In galactic warfare, this was normal. Logical surrender was considered honorable. No shame in it. Just smart tactics. Thorn looked at Zephyra. We should accept. Corvin needs medical attention. We can't win this. Nixie nodded. It's the logical choice. But Zephyra thought about Marcus's lessons, about human history, about battles where humans refused logical surrender because logic wasn't everything. She remembered stories of Thermopylae, where 300 warriors held against thousands, of soldiers who turned defeats into victories by refusing to accept defeat. No, Zephyra said quietly. What? Thorn stared at her. We don't surrender. Zephyra's mind worked fast, analyzing the terrain, the enemy positions, the resources they had. An idea formed, crazy, risky, completely illogical. Exactly the kind of thing Marcus would do. You're insane, Nixie whispered when Zephyra explained her plan. Probably, Zephyra agreed. But it might work. And I didn't train with a human for 9 months to give up now. The plan was simple but dangerous. Zephyra would use her telepathy to coordinate their movements without communication that the enemy could intercept. Nixie would create a diversion using stealth. Thorn would provide covering fire. And Zephyra herself would do the impossible, climb the canyon wall under fire and flank the enemy from behind. That wall is nearly vertical, Thorn said. Even I couldn't climb it. You're not as light as me, Zephyra replied, and you didn't spend 9 months learning to ignore pain. They executed the plan at sunset. Nixie's diversion worked perfectly, drawing enemy fire to one side. Thorn's covering fire kept them busy, and Zephyra climbed. Her fingers bled, her muscles screamed. Plasma bolts hit the rocks near her head, showering her with hot debris. Every logical part of her brain told her to stop, to retreat, to surrender. But she heard Marcus's voice in her head. Pain is just information. Don't let it control you. She kept climbing. When she reached the top, the enemy team was completely focused on Thorn's position below. They never expected anyone to climb that wall. Zephyra moved silently behind them, using every stealth technique Nixie had shared with her. She struck fast, non-lethal shots, just like in training. 1 enemy down. 2. The third turned, shocked to see her, and hesitated for just a moment. That moment was all Zephyra needed. Within 30 seconds, it was over. The enemy team was neutralized, and Drex stared at Zephyra with complete disbelief. How? Was all he could say. Zephyra helped him up. The exercise was over for his team. A human taught me that surrender should never be the first option. Her team stared at her as she descended back down. They'd won an unwinnable fight. The fragile Ethel had just done something none of them thought possible. What exactly did that human teach you? Nixie asked, genuine respect in her voice now. Zephyra touched the patch Marcus gave her. He taught me that the only real limit is the one you accept. Word of Team 7's impossible victory spread through the Crucible. Other teams started watching Zephyra differently. The Ethel who trained with a human had just changed the game. The final week of the Crucible arrived, and with it came the ultimate test, the fortress assault. Every year, the same thing happened. All remaining fire teams had to attack a fortified position defended by the Academy's best instructors. The fortress was built into a mountain, with high walls, energy shields, and perfect defensive positions. It was designed to be unbeatable. For 300 years, every graduating class had tried to take the fortress. For 300 years, every class had failed. It wasn't about winning. It was about learning when to recognize an impossible situation and minimize casualties. That was the lesson. Cadets were expected to make an attempt, fight honorably, then withdraw. It was tradition. But Zephyra had learned from a species that didn't always respect tradition. She stood with the other team leaders on a ridge overlooking the fortress. 12 teams remained, 48 cadets total. The fortress held 20 instructors, including Marcus. The other team leaders were already planning their token assault. "We attack from the main gate, make a good showing, then pull back," said Drex, who had become strangely respectful of Zephyra after their canyon encounter, just like every year. "What if we didn't?" Zephyra said quietly. Everyone turned to look at her. "What do you mean?" asked Scylla, a Zenthari team leader. "What if we actually tried to win?" Silence fell over the group. Then someone laughed. "Win? Against 20 veteran instructors in a perfect defensive position? That's not brave, that's stupid." "Maybe," Zephyra said. She'd been watching the fortress for 3 days, pushing her telepathy to its limits despite the headaches it caused. She'd studied the instructors' patrol patterns, analyzed their defensive routines, looked for any weakness. And she'd found something. The instructors were defending perfectly, by the book, exactly as military doctrine taught. They expected a conventional assault because that's what they'd seen for 300 years. But Marcus had taught her that humans didn't always fight conventionally. "I have a plan," Zephyra said, "but it requires all 12 teams working together. No glory for individual teams. No holding back. Everything we have, perfectly coordinated." "That's impossible," Drex said. "Some of our species have been enemies for centuries. We can't coordinate that well." "Humans did it," Zephyra replied. "In their world wars, species, nations they called them, that hated each other learned to fight together against common enemies. If they could do it, why can't we?" She laid out her plan. It was audacious, complicated, and required split-second timing. It needed teams to sacrifice their own success for others' breakthroughs. It demanded trust between species that barely trusted their own kind. The other team leaders listened, their expressions shifting from skepticism to interest to something like hope. "This is crazy," Scylla said finally. "But I've watched you do impossible things all month. Maybe crazy is what we need." One by one, the other teams agreed. They would try something that had never been attempted, a real assault, with real coordination, using tactics adapted from human military history. That night, Zephyra couldn't sleep. She touched the patch Marcus gave her. Tomorrow, she would either prove everything he taught her, or fail spectacularly in front of the entire academy. The assault began at dawn. The instructors on the fortress walls saw the cadets approaching and smiled. Another year, another traditional attempt. They readied their weapons, prepared to give the cadets a good fight before the inevitable retreat. Then the first wave hit, not at the main gate like always, but at 3 points simultaneously. Teams 9 and 11 created diversions on the flanks, while Team 3, led by Scylla, pushed hard at a weak point Zephyra had identified. The instructors adjusted, shifting defenders to meet the threat. That's when the second wave struck from a completely different direction, teams coordinating without communication, using only precise timing. On the walls, Marcus watched the assault develop. His expression never changed, but inside, he recognized every tactic. These weren't standard galactic warfare maneuvers. These were human strategies, combined arms, feints, breakthrough, and exploitation. His student had learned well. The battle intensified. Teams took casualties but didn't retreat. When one team broke through a section of wall, others immediately exploited the gap. When defenders moved to close it, another team struck elsewhere. The instructors were good, veteran warriors with decades of experience. But they were defending against something they'd never faced before, cadets who fought like humans, who refused to accept the logical impossibility of their situation. Team 7, with Zephyra leading, had the hardest job. They had to infiltrate through a drainage tunnel that was supposed to be too small for most species. But Zephyra was small, and Nixie was smaller. Corvin, fully healed now, provided covering fire while Thorn held the entrance. Inside the fortress, Zephyra and Nixie moved through corridors designed to funnel attackers into kill zones. But they didn't move like attackers. They moved like ghosts, using every stealth technique, every trick Marcus taught her. They reached the command center just as the main assault reached the fortress gates. The instructors there were focused on coordinating the defense, directing their forces to meet the attacks. They never expected two cadets to appear behind them. "Surrender with honor," Zephyra said, her weapon aimed steady. The instructors turned, shocked. Then one of them, a grizzled Chromat commander, started laughing. By the stars, they actually did it. Outside, the fortress gates opened. Cadets poured through, meeting minimal resistance now that the command center had fallen. For the first time in 300 years, the cadets had won. Marcus stood in the fortress courtyard as Zephyra emerged from the command center. Around them, instructors and cadets from dozens of species watched in stunned silence. Zephyra walked up to Marcus. She was exhausted, bleeding from a dozen small wounds, covered in dirt and sweat. But she was standing, and she was victorious. Marcus did something he rarely did. He smiled. Then he gave her a formal salute, the human gesture of respect between warriors. Zephyra returned it perfectly, just as he'd taught her. "Well done, cadet," Marcus said quietly. "You showed them what humans have known for thousands of years. The only impossible battles are the ones you don't fight." Around them, cadets and instructors began to applaud. Not the polite acknowledgement of a good attempt, but genuine respect for an unprecedented achievement. The fragile Ethel girl who could barely run for 2 minutes had just changed 300 years of tradition. And the galaxy would never look at humans, or their methods, the same way again. Graduation day arrived with clear skies and ceremony. Zephyra stood in formation with the other cadets, wearing the uniform of a graduate. She was no longer the weakest cadet. The Academy records now listed her among the honor graduates, the top 10% of the class. More than that, she was the tactical innovator who had achieved the impossible. Instructors from across the galaxy studied recordings of the fortress assault. Military scholars wrote papers about the new coordination tactics. The Galactic Council itself had sent observers to interview her. They offered her everything. A position in the Council's elite tactical division, a teaching role at the Academy, command of her own unit, fame, respect, resources, anything she wanted. Zephyra declined it all. "I'm going home," she said simply. "That was always the plan." The Council representatives looked confused. "But you could do so much here. Your people sent one cadet. Surely they would understand if you stayed?" "My people sent me to learn how to defend them," Zephyra replied. "That's exactly what I'm going to do." On her final day, Marcus met her at the training ground where it all began. The same track where she'd collapsed after 2 minutes of running, where he'd carried her back to the starting line and promised she'd do better. "I heard you're going home," Marcus said. "Yes, sir." "They offered you everything, and you said no." Zephyra looked at the track, remembering that first terrible morning. "You taught me that humans don't fight for glory or comfort. They fight for something bigger than themselves. I came here for my people. Everything I learned belongs to them." Marcus was quiet for a moment. Then he held out his hand, another human gesture she'd learned. A handshake. A sign of respect between equals. "You were a good student, Zephyra. Better than I expected. But more than that, you understood the most important lesson. It's not about being the strongest. It's about never giving up on the people who need you." They shook hands. Then Zephyra boarded the transport that would take her home. The Ethel homeworld was exactly as she remembered. Beautiful crystal spires, floating gardens, peaceful cities where her people studied science and created art. But now she saw it differently. She saw how fragile it all was, how unprepared her people were for the dangers growing in the galaxy. The High Command received her with curiosity. They had sent a scholar to learn basic combat. What returned was something they didn't have words for in their language. Zephyra used a human word: warrior. "We need a new training program," she told the Council of Elders. "The galaxy is changing. Our technology won't be enough to protect us. We need soldiers who can fight, who can endure, who refuse to surrender." The Elders were skeptical. "The Ethel are not built for war. Our bodies are too fragile." "So were mine," Zephyra replied. "A year ago, I couldn't run for 3 minutes. Now I can fight for hours. Our limitations are real, but they're not absolute. We just need to train differently." She showed them recordings of her training, her fights, the fortress assault. She explained human methodology: progressive training, mental toughness, turning weakness into strength. "This is too harsh," one elder said. "Our people will never accept such suffering." "Then our people will never survive what's coming," Zephyra said firmly. "I'm not asking permission, I'm offering a choice. Those who want to learn can join me. Those who don't can continue as before." She established the first Ethel warrior training program in a remote facility. She expected maybe 20 volunteers. 200 showed up the first day. Young Ethel, who had seen the galaxy changing, who knew their people needed defenders, who wanted to be more than fragile scholars. They came to learn from the Ethel who trained with a human. Zephyra taught them everything Marcus taught her. Early morning runs that started at 2 minutes and grew longer each day. Combat techniques that used speed instead of strength. Mental training to push through pain and exhaustion. Stories of human persistence, human courage, human refusal to quit. It was hard. Many students wanted to quit in the first week. But Zephyra remembered her own first week, collapsing on the track, wanting to give up. "Tomorrow, you'll do better," she told them. The same words Marcus once told her. And they did. News of the program spread. Other Ethel were shocked. Their people embracing military training, accepting pain as part of growth. It went against everything their culture taught. Then the border conflicts began. A hostile empire called the Krell tested Ethel territory, expecting easy targets. The Ethel had always been passive, relying on diplomacy and defensive technology. Easy prey. But when Krell forces attacked an outlying colony, they didn't face passive scientists. They faced 47 graduates of Zephyra's program, 47 Ethel warriors who fought with unexpected ferocity, who used tactics the Krell had never seen, who refused to surrender even when outnumbered. The Krell retreated, confused, and defeated. The galaxy took notice. Within a year, other species began requesting information about the new Ethel training methods. Within 2 years, a dozen species asked for human advisors to help develop similar programs. The Galactic Council, which once viewed humans as primitive newcomers, now studied human military philosophy. Marcus, promoted to colonel, visited Zephyra's facility 3 years after her graduation. He watched her putting students through the same exercises he once taught her, saw her push them to failure and teach them to rise, heard her tell them stories of human history and human courage. "You've built something remarkable," Marcus said as they walked through the training grounds. "I just shared what you taught me," Zephyra replied. "No," Marcus said. "I taught you techniques. You taught your people something more important. You taught them that they're stronger than they believed." Zephyra watched her students running in the morning light. Some were struggling, falling behind, but they kept going. They didn't quit. "Are you proud?" she asked Marcus. Marcus thought about the fragile girl who could barely run, who became a warrior and then became a teacher, who changed not just herself, but her entire species. "I'm proud because you didn't just become strong," he said. "You showed others how to find their own strength. That's what real warriors do." As Marcus's ship prepared to leave, Zephyra stood with her students. Together, they watched the human vessel disappear into the stars. "Tomorrow we train harder," Zephyra told her students. They nodded, determined. They had learned the most important human lesson. There's no limit to what you can achieve if you refuse to quit. Across the galaxy, in 100 different training facilities, other instructors, human and alien alike, spoke the same words to their students. The frail alien girl who trained with a human had sparked a revolution, not through weapons or technology, but through something simpler and more powerful, the belief that anyone can become a warrior if they're willing to work for it. The age of humanity had begun, and it started with one girl who refused to accept her limitations. The end.